Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing the 6th Doctor's story, Timelash. Now, as always with a classic series review, I have with me the television companion, and I'm going to read the synopsis to the story that's contained within it. On the planet Carfel, a high-ranking official, Malin Tekka, uses threats against Perry to force the Doctor to go to Earth and bring back a young woman called Vina, who, while holding a precious amulet, has accidentally fallen into the Timelash, a time tunnel through which the planet's tyrannical ruler, the Borad, banishes all rebels. The Doctor also inadvertently brings back Herbert, a man from the 19th century, who stows away aboard the TARDIS. The Borad was once a Carphalon scientist, but accidentally sprayed himself with an unstable compound called Muscatosine 80 while experimenting on a Morlocks, a savage underground reptilian creature, and consequently became half Carphalon, half Morlocks. The Borad plans to bring about the deaths of all the Carphalons by provoking a war with their neighbours, the Bandrils, and repopulate the planet with creatures such as himself, starting with Perry. The Doctor uses a Chronoton time crystal to defeat a clone of the Borad and makes peace with the Bandrils. He then defeats the real Borad by banishing him through the Timelash to 12th century Scotland. I've done nearly 30 reviews, and all of them have kind of gone in the region of 3 to 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. And Timelash is slated for being not the best Doctor Who story ever. Not one of the best anyway. And I was thinking to maybe even it up a little bit and have a look at it and look at the story and see if it actually is as bad as everybody makes out. I mean, I've seen the story multiple times, but this is the first time I've had a more critical eye over it than just watching it in a take my brain out capacity. And if I'm absolutely honest, it's not too bad. Whether it justifies having the ratings and the rating I want to give it, that's down to what you guys think. But overall, the idea is pretty sound. It's very basic. The first part's actually pretty good. The second part falls apart a little bit. And nice plot lines, a nice way it works. But it does fall apart a little bit. And it definitely has been written with 25 minutes in mind per episode than 45 minutes per mind, because there's definitely beats throughout the story which could quite easily split it into a 4-parter than the 2-parter 45 minutes we have here. Production values aren't the best either. You can tell it's a cheap one. I mean, the sets aren't too bad, but there's elements where things break or they don't quite work. There's the power room early in the story where the old Malin, can't remember his name now, what's his name again? Mikros. The old Malin Mikros goes in the power room and he's moving that controller. It'll be that way. Moving that controller. No, I was right, but that way. Moving that controller along and he breaks it. It comes off in his hand and he has to place it really quickly through the scene. There's the time tunnel itself and the tinsel that's in it. And put it this way, they're doing well with what they've got, but this is the sort of thing they would do in the 60s, not the 80s. It looks a bit cheap and cheerful. I mean, they've done the best of what they can, but you can tell it's a cheap budget one. You can tell it's the one with the budget's really cheap. And actually, if you look very closely, you can tell where they inserted the extra scenes in the TARDIS, the bickering side, because there's more of the TARDIS, the bits with Herbert and the Doctor alone in the TARDIS, and the bits with Perry and the Doctor near the beginning. But there's a bit there where Colin Baker's hair is a bit more straggly than the rest of the scenes, so you can tell it's a little bit later and it's filmed at a later time, which it was filmed during the filming for Revelation of the Daleks. So it's not ideal in that respect. And yes, I'll get to the characters and the characterizations in a moment, because they're the bits that really make or break it. I just want to get the production bits out of the way, because they did well with what they've got, but it looks tired, it looks cheap, it looks like they've run out of ideas, more like they've run out of money than anything else. They've tried to be imaginative with it, but there's elements you can think, now that's cheap. You've then got there's other bits that are brilliant, and I'll come to like the Borad's makeup is fantastic design, considering how limited their budget probably must have been. It's pretty good. I think it's quite a good little piece of makeup that's been done there. Most of the costumes are basically boiler suits, loosened up a little bit. Not flattering to anybody. The only one who's got really a costume as such, apart from the Doctor and Perry, is Vina, with that high-browed dress that she's got, that purple dress she's got, and of course Herbert with his Victorian garb, late Victorian garb. But overall, yeah, I can see why people would detract from it in the long run, in regards to the production values. It is cheap. It's not the best example of mid to late 80s Who in regards to production values. There's other better versions either side of it, never mind. The direction's plodding, I think is the right way. Pennant Roberts is okay, and there's times where his direction is pretty good, but this one's pretty standard and safe, and you don't really get many arty shots or anything like that. It is pretty much working to the full camera setup, and it is competent. It does well. I'll come to the music later. Let's go through some of the characters, the music and the writing later. Let's go to some of the characters. So you got the Doctor by Colin Baker, played by Colin Baker, of course, that gentleman up there. To be fair, Colin seems settled in the role at this point. Apparently there was a production thing where he was taken away for rehearsals for pantomime at some point during the rehearsals, and you can tell at some points the performance isn't quite as refined as it has been. But he seems to have found his niche there, and there is that acidness that the Sixth Doctor has, but there's also that kind of warmth that Carey has of Perry, and I actually quite like the interplay that Colin Baker has with Paul Darrow's character Tekka, and the way they work together, and it's nice to see a role reversal as such, and I'll explain that a little bit more later on. Overall, the Doctor's okay, he's tolerable. There's occasional flashes of arrogance there, but it's not overstated. It's starting to mellow down a little bit now, which I'm quite liking, and it's certainly the side of Colin Baker's Doctor I do like. This kind of acid portrayal he has in the very early part of his first season, and the Twin Dilemma is it can be jarring at times. Then you've got Nicola Bryant playing Perry, who basically becomes Perils of Pauline for this story. Perry's quite a strong character in all the other stories, and does get a bit to do. You get a little element of her botany interest, but overall, she's there getting stuck, locked up, tortured, scared by the big Morlock's head. There's a few rude comments about what that looks like, which I'm not going to go into in this review. And it's not the best before. She does a good job what she's got, but to be fair, Nicola Bryant's had better material, and she has better material either side of this. This is not Gold Perry. This is not Gold Perry at all. Then you've got Paul Darrow, who chews the set with his role as Tekka. Even from this first scene, he's chewing the set. The evilness side, he plays well. But when he's speaking to the Doctor, he kind of overacts. He's like a bad Shakespearean actor, the way he overreacts. And actually, as I say, it's roles reversed, because when Colin Baker was in Blake 7 playing Babe and the Butcher a few years before, he went over the top. So Paul Darrow's kind of returned the favour a little bit. He's enjoyable to watch, and I can understand why people don't like his portrayal. He's a bit OTT at times, he is, but he's not the worst of the guest cast. By a far, he is not the worst of the guest cast. One of the best of the guest cast is the Borad, played by Robert Ashby. Very understated, this character doesn't shout or scream. It's very low and calm voice, and it makes him very menacing. As I say, the makeup's good for the actor, and Robert Ashby plays it very well, and very scheming. There's a couple of scripting issues with the Borad, which I'll come to in a minute, but I don't, it's a good villain. He is a good villain, very scheming, very plotting, very quiet, and the best villains tend to be the quieter ones for most of the time. I know Davros is probably an exception, but when Davros rants, he rants, and it takes him away. But when he's in the scheming stage, those sort of characters work better as enemies than the ones that rant, rave, and scream all the time in Doctor Who. Then you've got other guest cast. You've got Mikros, Eric Deacon. It was Rennis who was the old male and not Mikros. Sorry, got that wrong. So you got Mikros, played by Eric Deacon. Decent performance. He's kind of like the action man of the piece of the planet of Carfel. He's okay. He's solid enough. Unfortunately, Jeananne Crowley's performance of Vina is off. And I'm trying to think why she seems so wooden. And it's eye contact. She has a lack of eye contact with all the characters she speaks to. Even when she's trying to have one-to-one with people, she'll start a sentence speaking away from the person she's speaking to, stare in the distance, and then look at them. It's stilted. It doesn't work. It's slow. It just doesn't seem like a proper acting performance, and it just doesn't work. And there's something about it that doesn't work, and you kind of want her to be thrown the time lash and never come back again. And it's one of those characters. You've then got Neil Hallett, who plays Rennis, the old Malin. He plays it like a character who's well weary but wants to plot and doesn't have the guts to plot, which is where Mikros comes in. He plays it suitable enough. You've got Kendron, played by David Ashton. Oh, he falls into the character of what Vina does, that sort of thing, where the acting, he's the other side though. He's a whiny, annoying acting, and he just seems too panicky all the time, and it just doesn't work. It's a horrible character. Then you've got one of the better characters, Herbert, played by David Chandler. Now, Herbert is, of course, supposed to be, a spoiler, H.G. Wells in his younger days. And David Chandler plays it with wonder and a determination and a pluckiness, which is really endearing and does lift the story. The fact that Herbert is effectively the companion Perry is not in this story. Inquisitive, questioning, wants to dive in there and help as best they can. And is basically the companion that Perry should have been in this story. And I think that's probably a fair assessment. David Chandler plays it brilliantly. I think he's got... I love the character, and it's a very nice character, and you do like every scene he's in. The bits in the TARDIS with him and the Doctor, when they're going to use the TARDIS as a shield to blow up the Bandrel's missile, is very well played between the two of them. Herbert works very well there with the conversation they're having with the Doctor, and you can see why the Doctor would get a little bit annoyed with that abrasive personality. It does work quite well, and yeah, he's certainly one of the better actors here. You've got other characters. You've got Brunner, who doesn't really do much. Played by Peter Robert Scott. He's there for the first half and gets Perry into trouble, and then doesn't seem to be seen again once he gets thrown into Timelash. That's probably why. You got Saison by Dickon Ashworth. He plays a rebel. He plays it okay. You've got Katz, played by Tracy Louise Ward. She plays it in a way that she feels that she has a love interest with Saison. I'm kind of understanding where that comes from, but the bit where they're fighting at the beginning of the second episode and Saison gets hit, Katz's reaction is very caring, which and she does a decent job of being the supporting cast there. It's not a bad wee performance there. And you've got other characters that are in there that I'm not going to mention too much, but there's two other characters I will mention. Dennis Carey making his last appearance in Doctor Who as the old man, or the Borad that everybody sees. He's not doing much, but the inflection in Dennis Carey's voice always works in the characters he's played. He does that with the Keeper. He does that with the Keeper and Keeper Traken. He does that with Cronotis in Sharda. He's quite good with the intonation he has in his roles. And the standout stilted performance, and I know it's deliberate, is Dean Holmesworth's android. And the bit I don't like about the android is the bit when Bruna notices Peri's gone into the caves, and he comments how pretty she was, and the android turns around and said, "Yes, indeed, she was." Basically, like the 4 bars you get in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Do 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 do. That's what it sounds like. It's really weird, and it's odd. And that's really some of the cast there and the ups and downs, really. The writer, Glenn McCoy, his first script, you can tell it's his first script. There's plot holes and elements there. The time travel bit is done quite well. I don't know if that's, would fill in the gaps or not. The premise is there. I like the idea of this dictator who has overtaken and caused fear and distress. The Timelash is an interesting concept, although not realised that well with the tinsel in the background and everything else. But the writing is actually not too bad in most parts. The bits with the Borad are actually probably the best bits of script. The conversation between the Doctor and the Borad in his inner sanctum is really quite chilling, and it's actually quite a good little piece, I suppose is the way it calls it. I'll go back to the direction a little bit here. Yeah, most of it's overlit and staid and clinical, but the bits in the inner sanctum with the Borad are underlit, and they work quite well. They're quite creepy, and they do make it more than just a overlit this will do lighting that goes through most Doctor Who of this time. When you're talking about futuristic settings, they all do it. Even into the McCoy era, they kind of do that as well. But the incidental music by Liz Parker, I think this is the only time she's actually does anything for Doctor Who. And it's mostly incidental. There's not really any themes as such. It's just helping to plod the action along. And I love the dee do dee do do the synth saw. I think it's saw wave or something like that. I love that little bit. The bit near the Timelash kind of works when the Doctor's been thrown into the time, or trying to be thrown into the Timelash that time. It kind of works there. Overall, it's not jarring. It does complement it a little bit. It's maybe a harsher incidental music than you get with some, and it's more in the region of what you would have with Roger Brearley. Is it Roger Lim and his stuff? It's kind of that harsher sound you get with Roger Lim stuff. Mind you, Roger Lim did a brilliant job with Case of Androzani, so it proves that obviously he's got that way of doing it. But yeah, that's the thing with incidental music this era, because it's mostly synth. It can be jarring at times to modern ears a little bit, and this one it doesn't. It kind of does its job and does it well. I don't have much problem with it. Incidentally, when I'm recording this and it will go out, it's actually 35 years since it was originally broadcast, to the week. It was broadcast, which is quite interesting. So that was ironic. It wasn't planned like that. It's just the way it seems to have turned out. And overall, that does make it an interesting proposition to review. Overall, it's okay. It's not the best Doctor Who. I can see why people may not necessarily enjoy it as much. But to be fair, I don't think it's the worst of Doctor Who. It's certainly, you can see it's low budget. You can see it doesn't work like that. Some of the acting is awful, which brings it down. But some of the acting's brilliant. The two leads, one is okay. The other is terrible. That brings it down a little bit. My TARDIS is out of 5. I think I'll have to go halfway here and do 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's have a look and see, and that's what I was trying to bring up there, let's have a look and see how Timelash sits within the rest of the views so far. So Timelash is the first story to have 2.5 TARDISes out of 5 assigned to it. The 2 stories above it are only on 3 TARDISes out of 5, which are The Idiot's Lantern and Battlefield. At the top still, we have 6 stories on 4.5 TARDISes out of 5, and in the order they've been reviewed, they are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it for now. Thanks guys as always for watching. Sunday is a Kidstructor with Fraser, Jamie and myself, or Seamus as he likes to be called. Or is that his name? I don't know. So that's a Kidstructor that comes up Sunday, 4 PM GMT. General is when a video comes out. UTC +0 is the time zone you'll be looking at. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag Teamstructor. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think of the story of Timelash. Do you like it? Do you not? What are your best bits? What are your worst bits? And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like it as a whole, and hit that notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. I am back on Sunday, as I say, with a Kidstructor, and also, if you are wanting to take part in any question and answer session I'm doing for Streamstructor in April, leave a comment down below in this video with the hashtag Streamstructor. I'll pick up all the comments from the videos that have been released in March, and I'll use them to help my questions for my pre-record for Streamstructor, which is premiering on April the 5th. Time still to be decided. I'm doing it that way because I can't live stream on the 5th. I'll be elsewhere, so I am going to be premiering instead. So leave your questions down below and I'll try and answer the best I can when I pre-record it. The closing time for that will be announced, a closing date for that will be announced in the channel update a week on Sunday. So hopefully you can join me for that to find out what's happening with that. But until next time guys, thanks very much for watching and I'll see you later.